Hola, كم اسمنا؟
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطاهرين ما دام ما في السماوات والأرضين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم إنا نسألك علما ينفعنا اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتفكير والإفادة والاستفادة والنفع والانتفاع والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. وبعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alhamdulillah, we thank and praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of his blessings that he has bestowed upon us. And we beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in those blessings. One such blessing is that Allah has afforded us the opportunity to spend some time in these last 10 days, the most significant days of the month of Ramadan, to spend it in the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah enable us to optimally use our time once we are here. There's an Arabic saying that goes, al-waqtu as-sayr, إذا لم تقطعه يقطعك. Normally among scholars even, this particular statement, it says al-waqtu as-sayr, that time is like a sword. If you don't cut it, it will cut you. But in one of the books, Al-Ma'fuwat, in that particular edition, it says that the correct version is al-waqtu as-sayr, that time is like a flood. Time is like a flood. إذا لم تقطعه, if you don't cut it, in other words, if you don't cut off the flood, يقطعك, then it will cut you off. It makes more sense. Al-waqtu as-sayr, that time is like a flood. In other words, if you don't manage your time, then time will run away. Procrastination. So Allah grant us that we are able to optimally benefit from our time. One of the brothers mentioned to me just before Asr that this is the last Thursday of the month of Ramadan. This is the last Thursday. So it gives a good perspective that the month of Ramadan is quickly coming to an end. But alhamdulillah, the best of the month still remains, so we should use it optimally, inshallah. Another thought that came to mind about time, a person came to Imam al-Haddad, and as the story goes, and I read it myself, one of the students related to me. So he wanted to ask Imam al-Haddad a question. So Imam al-Haddad said to him that, tell the person he must first pay. I must ask a question, must first pay, and then I will answer his question. So he said to him, Imam al-Haddad, how can you charge the person needs an answer, and now you want some monetary gain? So Imam al-Haddad says something very beautiful. He says, he was going to give the money back immediately. But he said, I want him to spend ma anfas indahu, that which is most valuable to him. So this person is a person of deity, person of the marketplace. The most valuable thing for him is wealth. So I want him to spend that before I spend what is most valuable to me, anfas indi, which is my time. So scholars generally, you find, alhamdulillah, you have the good fortune of being among students and scholars. The most precious thing that they have is the time. And therefore, also we must be very responsible when we deal with ulama. Shaykh al-Fatah talks about this in terms of etiquette. When we talk to ulama, we must realize that the most important aspect of an alim is his time. And therefore, Shaykh al-Fatah talks about when you visit a scholar, it's not like you're visiting a normal person. He actually has 101 things to do. The 24 hours in the day is in reality not enough for him for the amount of work that he has. Questions, answers, service, and whatever is required. So it's very important for us to, when we're dealing with scholars, to be conscious in terms of what the time is, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And normally when you visit a friend, you might stay for 1 hour, 2, 3 hours. Or in i'tikaf, if you're chatting to somebody upstairs, it's fine, you can chat, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. But for Ali, 10 minutes is sufficient to ask you a question, to get your answer. Because only after his book is open already, he's got work to do. And you may be a convenient excuse for him not to be doing his work, so you must also be lazy, he must just do his work properly. You know? But now you're just providing a convenient excuse for him, etc. So may Allah bless you and please you know, inshallah we continue. So we had spoken about yesterday that a person, if he issues a divorce under duress, is being coerced, is forced to, then that particular divorce doesn't fall. So in terms of the explanatory notes, and again we're reading from the book فتح الوهاب المالك في حل ألفاظ عمدة السالك وعقدة الناس تأليف طه بن عبد الحميد بن محمد حمادي حفظه الله. So he ends with this particular discussion by mentioning the conditions of coercion. So when these conditions are met, then the divorce will fall or not fall. In other words, you being duly coerced, that will not fall. When the conditions of coercion are met, then the divorce will not fall. What are those conditions? The first condition would be قدرة المكره على تحقيق ما هدد به بولاية أو تغلب. The person coercing you and is threatening you with something, that person must actually have the ability to carry out the threat. The person threatening you must have the ability to carry out the threat. If he doesn't have the ability to carry out the threat, then you're not coerced. So you can't say afterwards that I was under coercion. No, so that's the first condition. Condition number two would be عدم المكره عن دفعه بحرب أو غيره. If the person being coerced is unable to allay, is unable to divert the threat. If somebody is threatening me, for example, threatening to kill me, and I know that he's going to carry out the threat, but I'm able to run away. Or I'm able to seek refuge in somebody that's going to protect me, then I can't claim that I was coerced. Number three, وظنه أنه إن امتنع حقق به ما خوف به. And he must have, probable thought that if I'm not going to comply, then the person is actually going to do it. So there's two things. One is the capacity to carry out the threat, and the other one that the person is actually going to carry out the threat. So if somebody coerces me to divorce my wife, and he has the ability, but I'm doubtful whether he's actually going to follow through and carry out the threat. So there are two distinct things. They might appear to be the same. At least they appear to be the same to me, but they are distinctly different. So one is he actually has the capacity to shoot you. So now somebody coerces you, doesn't even know how to operate a gun. So let's say, do what you want to do. The other one is he does have the ability to kill you, but you say no probability is not going to follow through. If probability tells you that it's going to follow through, then that is considered to be a valid coercion. وأن يكون الإكراه حالا, that when a person is threatening you, that the threat must be an immediate threat. If he's threatening you to kill you in a year's time, and then you divorce your wife, then that's considered to be a valid threat. Allah knows best. And interestingly, the mention here is that the person mustn't intend the divorce to die. Just hypothetically speaking, a person wanted to divorce his wife, but he's too scared to divorce her. Now somebody comes along and he threatens him. So the person says, just what I was waiting for. And then he intends the divorce. Now, nobody can blame me now, because if I had to give the divorce independently, unilaterally, then people would have taken issue with me, or my wife would have sorted me out. But now she can't, because I'm under threat. So if under duress the person intends the divorce, then the divorce is going to fall. وَأَلَّا يَكُونَ الْإِكْرَاهُ بِحَقٍّ, and very importantly, the last rule is that the duress, the coercion mustn't be بِحَقٍ, in other words, rightfully, it mustn't be justified. If it is justified, then the divorce is going to fall. So now we go on to the next issue, بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى. The next issue is as follows: وَمَنْ زَالَ عَقْلُهُ بِسَبَبٍ لَا يُعْذَرْ فِيهِ كَالسَّكْرَانِ ومن شرب دواء يزيل العقل بلا حاجة يقع طلاقه. So I think we should read this from the start of the text here. ومن زال عقله. زال عقله, a person loses his sanity. بسبب, and the cause of his losing his sanity is لا يعذر فيه. It's not excusable. So a person loses his sanity, and the cause is not excusable. So the cause of your insanity is not justified, and therefore, if in that particular state a person issues a divorce, then the divorce is going to fall. If you think about it, the drunk person, does he know what he's doing or what he's saying? He doesn't. He's not of sound mind. Zala aqluhu, his mind is not there. But in that drunken state, if he says to his wife, Anti talikun, you are divorced, then the divorce is going to fall. Now, why? Because the means of his insanity is not justified. So in other words, if a person loses his mind due to justifiable reason, and then he issues a divorce in that state, and then he doesn't know what he's saying, so therefore, he's going to be excused. But if the cause of it is not justified, then he's not going to be excused. Therefore, the divorce of a drunken person, according to the Shafi madhab, falls. Now, وَمَنْ شَرِبَ دَوَاءً يُزِيلُ الْأَقْلَ بِلَا حَاجَةٍ يَقَعُ طَلَاقُهُ. A person takes medication, and as a result of the medication, he is not by his senses. زَالَ أَقْلُهُ again. Then, بِلَا حَاجَةٍ, but there's no need for him to have taken that medication. Then too, in this state, he issues a divorce, then his wife is going to be divorced. So these are the masail which our ulama talk about. So let's read through the explanation now بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى. It reads as follows. أي المتعدي لأنه والمنصرف إليه اللفظ عند الإطلاق ينفض طلاقه ويصل منه إليها. So in other words, a person drinks but it's an act of transgression. Somebody is forced to drink, let's say forced to drink, and now he's drunk. In the drunken state, he divorces his wife. Is the divorce going to fall? No. Why? Because, he was forced to drink, But now what happens? Somebody on their own volition goes and drinks and becomes drunk, and the drunken state divorces his wife. The divorce will fall. ينفض طلاقه ويصل منه إليها. The divorce will be enacted, ينفض, it will be consummate, and it will reach from him to her. In other words, it will occur, it will take place. كما ينفذ السهم من الرامي إلى المرمى. Just like if a person, is a bow and arrow, and now basically he lets go of the arrow. So the moment he lets go of the arrow, what's going to happen? The arrow is going to move towards the target, and is going to get the target. For us, it's maybe not the best type of expression, but you will come to understand as we read talaq, that talaq is basically an utterance. When a person utters that utterance, then it has to have a target that it reaches. So it's almost like and it can't be dodged. He's like dodging this way, that it can't be dodged. It's almost like an utterance. It's a homing utterance, which means that like you have like a missile, and it's a homing missile. That the missile is going to follow his target. Wherever the target goes, then the missile is going to follow and is going to hit the target. Likewise, when a person issues a divorce, like he is in the drunken state, he issues a divorce. What's going to happen? It comes from him and it reaches her. And it's going to reach. Therefore, we'll come later to look at different expressions which a person says. Ultimately, the scholars are going to design a target for that expression. When talaq is issued, it must get its target. Like the person standing at the range and he lets go of the arrow, it's going to get the target. The only difference is the person by the range, he might miss the target. But talaq never misses its target. So it talks about the potency of the utterance. And our caution should be exercised when dealing with talaq. ونفوض طلاقه السكران من قبيل ربط الأحكام بالأسباب. And this is what we discussed in one of the earlier classes. So you can argue that a drunken person, he is not morally responsible. In other words, he's not aqil baligh. He might be baligh, might be physically mature, but at that point in time when he's drunk, he's not aqil. We all agree. He's not of sound mind. So now, when he's not of sound mind, and he issues a divorce, you saying the divorce falls, how does that work? You with me? Because you're supposed to consider him like an insane person. If an insane person says, Anti talikun, you are divorced, then divorce is not going to take place. So how come you say the divorce takes place here, but it doesn't take place over there? So they explain a very important part of the Sharia, which we explained before. And that is that the occurrence of the talaq issued by a drunk person, how do we legally construct that? From an Islamic law perspective, how do we look at that? So we look at that in the following way. من قبيل ربط الأحكام بالأسباب. It is from the perspective of connecting rulings to causes. So now when we look at the drunk person, and he says the word talaq, talaq is a cause and it must have an effect. The word talaq is a cause and it has an effect. So when he says talaqtuki, that's the cause. What is the effect? His wife is now divorced from him. Are you with me? So it's now inconsequential whether he has the capacity or whether he has his sanity or not. You follow me? It's like related to the example we gave of, we said if a child comes, so does the child have contractual capacity? No. It's not morally responsible. The child comes and he breaks the camera. So this child may have a trust fund, and in the trust fund there's R1 million in the trust fund. The camera, who's going to pay for the camera? The child. Where's the money going to come from? It's going to come from the trust fund that he has. So now you might say, but look here, the child is not morally responsible. It's got nothing to do with whether he's morally responsible or not. It's that when you break something, that's a cause. And the effect is what? That you're responsible for it. You follow me? And I think that's a ruling. It's a very practical ruling. I don't know if does it sound complicated? Not complicated, very simple. But it's something which we must be aware of. We have young children, you bring them to a public space, for example, you bring them to the Waqf Masjid. If they damage something, it's not, hulle kinders, children, no. The law of Allah SWT connects the cause to the effect. And if they were the cause of something breaking, it means that when you break something, that's a cause. The effect is that you are liable for it. And if the child has money, the child must pay. If not, and then the guardian must take responsibility for it. So there's no sin on the child, yes. You follow me? Because the child there's no sin on the child if the child breaks the camera. If an adult breaks it, there's two things. You must pay for it, and also you're sinful for breaking it. Whereas the child, because it's a child, it's not sinful because the child doesn't know right from wrong. So you're not sinful, but it doesn't mean you're not responsible. So these are important things, especially in today's time where somehow or the other we find that everything must be in balance. Children, yes, they must be given that freedom, but that freedom, there must also be guardrails to that freedom in terms of upbringing and nurturing, and Allah knows best. No. ثم لا فرق بين أن يكون السكر طافحا بحيث يسقط أم لا. So now what happens is, when you drink, if you and we can conclude on this point, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will bring us to the end of this chapter. If you drink, then, if they quote you, if you had a glass of wine and you drive in the car and the traffic officer stops you. So they do this breathalyzer or something, they test you. And then if you're not above the limit, and then you're not considered drunk, and therefore you can drive. But if you're above the limit and then you're considered to be drunk. So now what happens is when a drunk person issues a divorce, it doesn't matter whether he's stone drunk or whether he just had one glass in terms of the Sharia. You follow me? So, because you might think, some people might say, look, if he only drank one glass, so yes, he did drink, but he's not completely drunk. So if he issues a divorce, then he's by his senses. So the divorce should fall because he knows what he's doing. You with me? Somebody can, argue like that. But the Sharia doesn't draw a distinction between whether you had a glass of wine to drink or you are stone drunk. It doesn't matter. In both instances, if you issue a divorce, the divorce is going to divorce is going to fall. So some would want to argue that you've had one and then now you buy your senses, so that divorce will fall. But if you're stone drunk, then it won't fall. No, in both instances. Whether you're stone drunk or you just had one glass of wine to drink, the divorce is going to fall. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the understanding. And we did now a few what they call masail. And we've also read through the explanation, which gives us an idea of how the Sharia works and how it's constructed. And I think it's very important for us to gain that appreciation. Because by and large, we are not exposed to our Sharia law. We're exposed to different other forms of law. And if you compare any form of law to the Sharia law, you'll find that the Sharia law is much more developed, much more sophisticated in a positive way, and much more complex in a positive way. May Allah SWT grant us understanding of our Sharia, and grant us contentment also in our Sharia, that our Sharia mutakaffilatun bi jami'i sa'adat. That you follow the Sharia, it will be the means that you guarantee your felicity in every aspect of your life. This is just but one aspect that we are discussing. Allah grant us the tawfiq. So inshallah we'll read a little bit through Sahih Muslim bi'idhnillah SWT from where we stopped off yesterday. Now, قال القاضي يقول المصنف رحمه الله نفعنا الله بكم آمين. قال القاضي وإنما المراد أن ذلك فعله وتأوله من لم يكن مخالطا للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بل هو من الأعراب ومن لا فقه عنده أو لم يكن من لغة استعمال الخيط في الليل والنهار. So again we see that one narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how Imam Nawawi rahimahullah unpacks it for us and gives us the different meanings that are contained within these words. So what was the narration? The narration speaks about a number of companions. The name that we mentioned was Adi ibn Hatim, and he thought the verse وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ. It referred to iqal, what we spoke about. It referred to a black thread and a white thread. But you can eat and drink up until you're able to distinguish the white thread from the black thread under your pillow. So now Qadi Iyad goes on to explain that how come this companion got that understanding? How come that companion got that understanding? So he mentions two reasons. The one reason is that, the Arabs had different dialects. So like the Quraysh, they spoke Arabic, but in one particular dialect. And then you'd have another tribe, let's say Tamim, they would be speaking Arabic, but in another dialect. So these companions who understood it in this particular manner, in their dialect, in their modality of Arabic, the word khayt wasn't used in this metaphorical sense to refer to the horizon. That's why they understood it in this particular manner. So that's one explanation. He's trying to explain to us now why the companion understood it in this particular manner. The second reason is, and this is also, I think, a very relevant reason for us. He says, it could very well be that they were from amongst the Bedouins. And generally in that time, if you're an urban dweller, a city dweller, if you're out in the desert, then your interaction with scholars is limited. So therefore, let's call it in our time, your literacy levels aren't that high as compared to a person who's in the city and who's close to the scholars. So it could very well be that they were from the Bedouins. They didn't have the level of understanding that the city dweller would have. Now, and generally when our scholars, the reason why a Bedouin wouldn't have that understanding is because he doesn't have the fortune of having the company of the scholars. So again, importantly, we want to gain understanding of our religion. How do we do that? We do that through keeping the company of scholars. Now, be with the truthful ones. So I think those are the two lessons that we can glean from there. Now, we spoke earlier about scholars and time and how we must value our time and value their time as well. But it doesn't mean you can't petition. Like sometimes I think also some people, they see a scholar, but they don't want to ask him a question because they tell themselves he must be very busy. No, as busy as he might be, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed him there to serve a certain purpose. And you must petition with him. I need some of your time because I have an important question. I don't have anybody else to ask. I must ask you. You follow me? So you being conscious of their time and how busy they are shouldn't stop you from taking of their time and asking of their time. There was one student, he doing quite a bit in terms of da'wah in North America now. He goes by the name of Jihad. When I was in Damascus, and then I heard about him, and he became a student of Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id Ramadan al-Bouti. Now, if you look at your local scholar and you consider him busy, you can imagine how busy Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id must have been. I mean, if you just look at his teaching schedule, I believe he taught in the morning at Ma'ad Fatah, and in the afternoon he taught at the University of Damascus. That's just his teaching, at kindergarten level. He's teaching at university level. So then, Jihad, this fellow from America, now you know how Americans are. So he came to Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id and he requested that, look, you must take us some time to teach me. So Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id, he said, look, I would love to, but I just don't have the time. So he said to them, but, along the lines of, what you're going to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, because I've came here to study and I have to go back to North America and I have to do da'wah there. Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id couldn't say anything at the Ranger class for him. Yeah, you with me? So, this hadith again talks about, you mustn't, some people they tell me, you're too busy. I said, but subhanAllah, you should just came and told me, and asked. So you mustn't let this, let the scholars go also. You must. And we came 2 nights ago, a beautiful verse of the Holy Quran. قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا خَوْلَةٌ or Khuwaila or Jamila. There's different riwayat in terms of what her name actually was and the incidents and so forth. She petitioned with the Prophet. She remonstrated with him and pleaded a case. And the ulama say that is actually a proof that when you have a case and then you go to the authority and then you must plead for your case. Are you with me? Don't say that Imam is too busy, Mullah is too busy, Sheikh is too busy. No. WhatsApp him, message him, call him, email him, catch him, trip him, lay an ambush for him, whatever it takes. And don't let him off the hook because it's an important question. It's your akhirah. You must make a plan. Alhamdulillah. So that's the first part of the explanation. Second part, لأنه لا يجوز تأخير البيان من وقت الحاجة ولهذا أنكر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عتادي بقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن وسادك لعريض إنما هو بياض النهار وسواد الليل. Because لا يجوز تأخير البيان من وقت الحاجة is a very important principle when it comes to the Sharia. And this is in relation to the legislator. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the legislator. Allah gives the rulings. And the rulings come to us through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So many times he's also referred to as the Sharia, as the legislator. Now, it's compulsory to fast. But now you also need to know, when do you fast from? What time do you fast from? You need to know you fast from daybreak up until sunset. Now, if the Sharia commands you to fast, right, it's not permissible for the Sharia not to provide you with the necessary details that you need to know in order to fast. You with me? So you'd always find there's a rule within Islamic legal theory that لا يجوز تأخير البيان عن وقت الحاجة. It's not permissible for the explanation of a given phenomenon to lag behind the time that it needs to be implemented. Because if I tell you to do something and you don't know what it entails, it's almost like I'm asking you to do something impossible. And the Sharia will not ask you to do something impossible. You follow me? So you can understand it in that way, then Allah SWT reveals it min al-fajri. If you wanted to, can understand that it came immediately. Why? Because in relation to these people now. But other ulama say no, the explanation was there, the Prophet ﷺ was there. And the wording is apparent enough. And if it wasn't very clear to you, then you must ask. And the Prophet ﷺ is right there. So the explanation is right in front of you. So again, the same idea. You know, you have some issue. If you can first hand get the law from the Quran and the Sunnah, good and well. But if you can't, it might be a very apparent thing, but then you must ask. Because the bayan, not in the form of the Prophet ﷺ, but the bayan in the form of the scholars are present. So you can ask them. And then you know basically what is required from you. And Allah SWT knows best. So we'll read a little bit like that every day. Even though we just maybe read one hadith, but you'll get to understand the intricacies and the depth to which the scholars go when it comes to these things. So our last reading, inshallah, bi'idhnillah SWT, from من كتاب المختارات من مكتوبات الإمام الرباني السرهندي بكلام العلامة الشيخ محمد أمين آر نفعنا الله بكم آمين. So we continue with the letter that Imam al-Sarhindi rahimahullah sent to Muhammad Khalij. So we said yesterday that even though we might not have these meanings, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, but at the very least we can try to theoretically understand what these concepts are, with the idea of aspiring to making it a reality within our lives. So may Allah SWT grant us that. So yesterday we spoke about the concept and the condition of a spiritual aspirant. And we said that there are two words, he is ka'in ba'in. Ka'in meaning he is with Allah. Ka'in means to be. Ka'inun ma Allah. He's with Allah in reality. Ba'inun al khalq. And he's separate from the creation. In other words, he's always conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or another explanation would be that he is ka'inun ma al khalqi zahiran. That he is with the creation apparently, but in reality he is separate from them. In other words, he's always with Allah. There's two explanations for it. The first explanation is he's always ka'inun ma Allah. He's with Allah all the time. Like in, you switch on the light is on, you do whatever you want to do, but the light is still there, all pervading. So like that is how we should be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always ka'in ma Allah. And the second point, if you remember, we spoke about that a person can have how many loves within his heart? It says he can only have one love. It's impossible. The heart cannot contain two loves. So as long as there's one love in the heart, then the other love cannot enter. And we want the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what's preventing the love of Allah entering the heart? The heart is already preoccupied. With what love? Imam Sarhindi was very clear, he says the love for the self. This brought us to the discussion of, but you love so many things. But those things that you love in reality is an extension of your love for yourself. And therefore you love other things. So what must happen is that we must remove the love of ourselves from our heart and replace it with the love of Allah. Which doesn't mean now that you can't love other things. Yes, you're going to love other things, but that love for other things is going to be by virtue of your extension of your love for Allah. You love Allah, and therefore you love, for example, halal and tayyiba. You love good food. So Allah SWT told you in Quran that you must eat of good food, what is halal and tayyib. So you love the good food, but that love for the good food is an extension of your love for Allah, not because of extension of your own nafs and yourself. No. And that's basically what we spoke about yesterday. And I think all of us, the problem with these discussions is, and it's the problem with spirituality in general, is that the best things in the world cannot be seen or touched, but felt in the heart. It's an experience that you're supposed to have. And I think on an experiential level, that if you tune your heart in such a way that you start loving things based on extension of your love for Allah, then you're going to have a different experience with these things. And this can't be explained. You must experience it yourself. To take the love of yourself out and replace it with the love of Allah. And by extension of your love for Allah, you start loving other things. You love your wife. Why? Because you love Allah. You love, the good things in life, like we say. Why? Because you love Allah. For example, if you like to dress smart, for example, you like to dress smart. You like to, dress smart. So you can love dressing smart because of yourself, because of your ego. Right? But you can also love dressing smart as an extension of your love for Allah. Because the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna Allah yuhibbu. Allah loves to see the effects of His blessing upon His slaves. So now what happens? He's dressing very neatly. Why? Because Allah gave me this blessing, and Allah loves to see that blessing on me. And when you do it in that way, what do you get? You get all the positives of looking smart, and you avoid all the negatives of looking smart. Because if it was your ego, and then somebody tells you, you think you look smart. Or somebody tells you, style is not something you can buy, man. People in Cape Town, I don't know if the right terminology is, they in Joburg, they used to say, you must yak liquor. You heard that before? You must yak liquor. You haven't heard that before? Is it local also here? In our local vernacular? Must yak liquor. Now a guy's trying to yak liquor. And then you tell him, you can't buy style. No. You can, so now what happens, if he's doing it because of his own ego, what's going to happen is, what's he going to do? He's going to become upset. But if he's doing it because of, this is the blessing which Allah gave me, whether my style suits you or not, I'm wearing it because Allah granted this to me, and I'm loving it because Allah SWT loves it. Are you with me? So you can think of multiple examples whereby you love something, but it's at the extension of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you're obviously not going to do things that Allah doesn't permit, because Allah doesn't love it, and therefore you don't extend yourself to loving that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love it. And those are beautiful meanings that we can experience, inshallah. So the Imam Sarindi goes on and says, وَهَذِهِ الدَّوْلَةُ الْقُصْوَةِ. And it's unique how he expresses these ideas. And what is a dawla? A dawla is like a kingdom. Quswa is like this great kingdom. Imagine how we say, nowadays you can buy a piece of land, but now you find people buy islands, get the island. What if I tell you, I'll give you a kingdom? You can buy, I'll give you a kingdom, and you come there. So these spiritual meanings, in other words, of reaching a state whereby you only have one love in your heart, and that is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because you love Allah, you will be with Allah. That state, Imam Sarhindi refers to it as a dawla quswa. This is a vast kingdom. And these are important things. Contentment is a vast kingdom. Because Imam Shafi'i says, إِذَا كُنْتَ ذَا قَلْبٍ قَنُوءٍ. If you have a heart of contentment, فَأَنْتَ وَمَالِكُ الدُّنْيَا سَوَى. Then you and the king of the world is the same. In other words, he has a kingdom, a physical kingdom. But because you have contentment, then you almost like equal to him. If not better, he might have the whole kingdom as a content, but you're equal to him. Are you with me? This likening of worldly wealth to the spiritual wealth. Spiritual is wealth. Now, so he puts it in that particular way. Quran also talks like that, about business, and a profitable business. He has a great kingdom for you. It's not material, but it's much more valuable than the material kingdom that you could ever have. So he says, وَهَذِهِ الدَّوْلَةُ الْقُصْوَى لَا تَتَحَقَّقْ إِلَّا بَعْدَ الْفَنَاءِ الْمُطْلَقِ. That this can only be realized after complete annihilation. In other words, when you've completely rid yourself of yourself. Yourself doesn't have a feature anymore. You don't do things based on your own ego and to placate your own ego, or to please your ego, or to give it like somebody harmed you and now you need to give revenge in order for your ego to be subdued. No. You completely annihilated your ego. فإن رفع الظلمات رأسا لا يتصور إلا بطلوع الشمس بازغة. Because the removal of all darknesses completely cannot be conceptualized إلا بطلوع الشمس بازغة, except when the sun rises completely. So, you can't have both day and night at the same time. It's either going to be night or it's going to be day. So in order for you to experience that light of Allah, then what needs to happen first? The darkness of the self needs to be removed. And when the darkness is gone, and then you're going to experience that complete light. May Allah SWT grant us that. So now, how does this, it's almost like he's talking about what is the utility of having the love of Allah SWT in your heart? So he says that فإذا حصلت تلك المحبة المعبر عنها بالمحبة الذاتية استوى عند المحب نعام المحبوب وإيلامه. So what happens is that if you have the love of Allah SWT in your heart completely, then what happens is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows a blessing upon you, right? And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you through difficulty, then both are equal by you. Why? Because you have the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. So then because you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does, that you accept. If Allah blesses you with blessings, you're happy. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deprives you of the same blessings, you're equally happy. Why? Because all you seek to want is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when that happens, and then you become completely sincere in terms of your worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not because of yourself, but you're worshipping Allah only because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not because something that you want. Allah grant us the tawfiq, inshallah. And a little bit of these meanings that we are theorizing about, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes to enter into our hearts. And these last days, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us His pure love, and that His love enter our hearts. And we experience this love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that's explained by Shaykh Muhammad As-Sarindi, in ways that they experience. These luminaries, they actually had these experiences. So they write based on the experiences. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like He enabled them to have these experiences, like He gave them the tawfiq. And there's la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. If Allah could enable them, then, wa rahmati wasi'at kulla shay, the mercy of Allah encompasses everything, then it can encompass us as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq, inshallah, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. I forgot to give the dua before we read it. I guys sent it? Okay, so inshallah we'll read the dua now quickly. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا رب علمنا الذي ينفعنا رب فقهنا وفقه أهلنا وقرابة لنا في ديننا مع أهل الكتر أنثى وذكر رب وفقنا وفقهم لما ترتضي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق الكل حلالا دائما وأخل أتقياء علما نحظى بالخير ونكفى كل شر ربنا وأصلح لنا كل شؤون وأقر بالرضا منك العيون واقض عنا ربنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل منون واغفر أستر أنت أكرم من ستر وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء بكتاب فيه للناس شفاء وعلى الآل الكرام شرفاء وعلى الصحب المصابيح الغرر اللهم اهدنا بهداك واجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك ولا تولنا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبة واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع آمين ربي اسمع
فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عداد طش الصحب والحمد للإله في البدء والتناهي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماتي.